While cooking, the woman made a horrifying discovery. She casually cracked open an egg, only to find it completely empty inside. No egg white, no yolk. Thinking it might be a fluke, she cracked open another egg, but it was the same story, completely empty. Every single egg was hollow. This eerie scene sent shivers down her spine. Could she be hallucinating? In a moment of panic, she grabbed the plastic wrap from the table and began wrapping it tightly around her face, layer after layer, until her entire face was covered. Then, she pressed her hands against the base of her neck to ensure no air could enter the plastic wrap. After a few minutes, she started to panic because she was genuinely struggling to breathe. However, due to the tight wrapping, she couldn't tear the plastic wrap off her head. Luckily, the woman had gotten her nails done just last week, so she managed to pierce the plastic wrap with her sharp fingertips and narrowly escaped death. However, her intention wasn't suicide. It was to test her theory that everything happening around her was fake, that she was trapped in a virtual world. Her name was Alice, a wealthy housewife living in a secluded town, along with 49 other loving couples. Every morning, their husbands would neatly drive off to work at a company called Victory, while the women kept their homes immaculate and enjoyed leisurely sunbathing sessions. It was like paradise on earth, and Alice relished in this life of leisure among her fellow housewives. However, one fateful noon while cooking chili scrambled eggs, she encountered something bizarre. The eggs in her hand felt weightless, and with just a gentle squeeze, they crumbled into pieces. This led to the strange scene described earlier. Initially, Alice brushed it off as bad luck, assuming she had picked a bad egg. So, she casually grabbed another one, only to find it empty as well. Every single egg was hollow. This eerie moment left Alice feeling unsettled, wondering if she was hallucinating. Later that evening, when her husband Jack returned from work, Alice shared the bizarre egg incident with him. To her surprise, Jack seemed unfazed, almost as if he had anticipated it. Without saying a word, they embraced and kissed each other. As the sun rose on the next day, Frank, the boss of Victory Company, invited all the employees to his house for a pool party. Everyone was having a great time until a black girl suddenly interrupted Frank's conversation, questioning why they were there. All eyes turned to her, indicating that her question resonated with everyone present. Sensing the tension, Frank quickly explained that they were there because of a recent war that had devastated the world outside. The survivors came together and built this secluded town, where men worked to provide for their families while women focused on maintaining their beauty and household duties. Under Frank's persuasive speech, everyone seemed to have their minds washed clean, forgetting their previous doubts. Only Alice remained deeply troubled, searching for Margaret's presence. Witnessing the inexplicable crushing of eggs yesterday, coupled with Margaret's recent conversation, Alice was convinced that this small town harbored some dark secrets. She took the chance while no one was around and quietly made her way to Margaret's house. There, she found Margaret's husband administering a white substance to her. In Alice's presence, Margaret uttered, "They've trapped me here." Shocked, Margaret's husband seemed to realize that their secret was out, quickly drawing the curtains and leaving Alice standing there bewildered. In the days that followed, Alice often found Margaret's words echoing in her mind. Determined to unravel the mystery, Alice took the car and drove alone to Victory Company, where her husband worked. Halfway through the journey, Alice suddenly noticed a plane malfunctioning in the sky, heading straight for the ground. She signaled the driver to stop and assist, but the driver pointed out that the direction of the plane crash was towards Victory Company. The town explicitly forbids women from entering that area. He urged Alice to abandon the idea and return to the town with him. However, Alice resolutely refused, her conscience telling her she couldn't stand by and do nothing. So, Alice got out of the car alone and headed towards the crash site of the plane. Passing by a warning sign, she didn't pay attention to the words, "Danger ahead. Unauthorized personnel prohibited." After walking for an unknown amount of time, Alice reached halfway up the mountain and didn't find any wreckage of the plane. Instead, there stood a circular building at the mountaintop, possibly the Victory Company where her husband worked. Following the path all the way up, Alice finally arrived at the mountaintop. Strangely, there was only a building resembling an observation deck, nothing like a company. As she approached the tempered glass, she curiously placed her hand on it, only for the glass to suddenly light up with a red alarm, enveloping Alice. Shortly after, she lost consciousness and passed out. When Alice woke up again, she found herself lying on the bed in a bedroom. Terrified, she stepped out of the living room, only to find her husband cooking dinner in the kitchen. Alice asked Jack how she got back home, but Jack claimed that he found her asleep in bed as soon as he returned, completely unaware of what Alice was talking about. Alice explained that she had just been to the Victory Company, but the moment she touched the tempered glass, she lost consciousness and passed out. When she woke up again, she was already lying on the bed in the bedroom. Jack dismissed Alice's experience as a nightmare, reassuring her that if it had really happened, he would have noticed. Comforted by her husband's words, Alice decided not to dwell on it further. As the second day dawned, Alice busied herself cleaning with a cloth. Once again, a strange scene unfolded. The wall behind her slowly began to inch closer toward her. Lost in her chores, Alice failed to notice the impending danger. By the time she realized, she was firmly trapped between the walls. With a chilling sound of bones cracking, Alice suddenly snapped out of her hallucination. Just then, the telephone in the living room rang unexpectedly. Answering it, she was surprised to find it was Margaret from next door. What shocked Alice even more was that Margaret seemed to know about her visit to the Victory Company. Urging Alice to leave immediately, Margaret warned that she might not get another chance. With that, she hung up. Realizing the danger, Alice hurried towards Margaret's house. When she reached the yard, Margaret was already standing on the roof. Right before Alice's eyes, Margaret took out a dagger and ended her own life. Alice rushed forward to intervene, but she was stopped by a group of mysterious figures dressed in red. Clearly, this town held some dark secrets. That night, Alice told her husband Jack about Margaret's suicide. She believed that Margaret must have known the town's secret, which led to her being forced to take her own life. But Jack argued that Margaret's husband had been buying medication for mental illness at the company recently, suggesting that she might have been suffering from mental health issues and that led to her suicide. Despite Jack's logical explanation, Alice couldn't shake off the memory of the mysterious figures in red during the day. Seeing that Alice wouldn't let it go, Jack shifted the blame onto Victory Company. He claimed that these were all company secrets and women shouldn't be involved. If any leaks occurred, he could risk losing his job. This incident only fueled Alice's suspicions about the Victory Company where her husband worked. With only one doctor in town, Alice believed that if Margaret did have a mental illness, there would be medical records. So, Alice pretended to be unwell and invited the doctor to their home. After a series of examinations, the doctor didn't find any physical abnormalities in Alice, attributing her symptoms to recent stress and excessive nervousness. He prescribed her medication to help with sleep. While signing the paperwork, Alice noticed a document in the doctor's briefcase with Margaret's name on it. Perhaps it held the answers she was looking for. So, she intentionally engaged the doctor in conversation and distracted him, causing him to leave the briefcase on the sofa. Seizing the opportunity, Alice quickly retrieved Margaret's file from the briefcase and then casually handed it back to the doctor as if nothing had happened. After the two left, she opened Margaret's file. To her surprise, all the text was obscured with black ink, seemingly deliberately done by the doctor to prevent unauthorized access. A few days passed, and a new couple arrived in town. The company boss invited everyone to his home for a gathering. It was during this gathering that Alice asked the newcomers how they had met. The woman claimed they met on a train. Before she could finish her sentence, Alice abruptly interrupted her, stating that they all met on the train, and the storylines were almost identical. Wasn't that too much of a coincidence? Alice believed that someone had implanted the same memories into their brains, which is why everyone's stories were identical. As soon as she said this, silence fell over the room, and everyone seemed to consider Alice's words. However, the company boss, Frank, abruptly ended the conversation. He accused Alice of trying to sabotage their relationships and intentionally finding excuses. The town strictly prohibited women from going to the company headquarters, yet Alice disobeyed orders and secretly went there. This was evidence enough that her mind was troubled. The gathering dispersed unhappily. As they left, Frank called Jack aside. He stripped him of his position as company supervisor. Alice sought out Jack, hoping to escape the town with him, which felt more like a prison that held them captive. Jack initially intended to refuse, but seeing his wife's pleading expression, he ultimately agreed to escape with her. After packing their bags, they got into the car to make their getaway. However, just then, Jack suddenly said, "I'm sorry." Before Alice could react, a group of red-clad mysterious figures forcibly pulled her out of the car. Alice kept pleading for her husband to help her, but Jack remained silent. Shortly after, Alice was taken by the mysterious figures to the hospital, where they performed brain surgery on her. While unconscious, Alice recalled her previous memories. She used to be a nurse at the hospital, juggling her job responsibilities with caring for her dependent husband. The prolonged exposure to their relationship had eroded Alice's confidence in Jack. Just as she was about to suggest divorce, Jack stumbled upon an online advertisement for a virtual product produced by a company called Victory. It claimed that by implanting everything you cherish into the consciousness of someone you don't want to lose, their consciousness would enter a virtual world where you could live carefree with your loved one. And their so-called work wasn't real work at all. It was about returning to the real world to replenish food supplies for their wives, as only by staying alive could they maintain the functioning of the world. After the surgery, Alice returned to the small town like a changed person, her memories erased by the doctors. Until one day, while Alice was working, she suddenly heard her husband playing a piece of music, and a familiar melody flooded into her brain. Alice collapsed to the ground, struggling in agony, and though her husband tried to help, she pushed him away. When she regained consciousness and looked up at Jack, all her memories came rushing back. Alice berated Jack for his actions, insisting that her life should be her own to control. But Jack claimed he did it out of love for her, not wanting to lose her. So they entered this virtual world where they didn't have to toil endlessly for work. Jack knelt on the ground, begging Alice for forgiveness, explaining that he felt compelled to do it. However, Alice ultimately decided to leave and return to the real world. Jack clung to her legs, desperate to try and persuade her otherwise. In a moment of desperation, Alice grabbed a wine glass from the table and smashed it over Jack's head. When Alice regained consciousness, Jack showed no signs of life. At that moment, the neighbor from next door walked in from outside and helped Alice deal with Jack's body. Once a character in the virtual world loses vital signs, the real world follows suit. The neighbor urged Alice to leave immediately because if this secret were discovered by the outside world, Boss Frank could face serious consequences, likely ending up in prison. So, they would surely do everything to keep Alice trapped here. Alice wanted to escape with the neighbor, but the woman revealed that her son had tragically died in the real world, and staying in this virtual world was the only way to continue being with him. It turned out she had known everything about this place all along and chose to stay voluntarily. Alice quickly dashed out of the villa, hopped into a sports car outside, and sped towards the direction of the company. With mysterious figures in pursuit, Alice skillfully evaded them with nimble maneuvers. Finally, she touched the tempered glass and returned to the real world.